Picture this. You're walking through Walt Disney World with your family. Your kids are running ahead, excited to meet Mickey Mouse. A friendly cast member in a Disney uniform stops to chat with them, maybe takes a photo. You smile and feel that warm Disney magic, because if Disney hired them, they must be safe, right? This is the sacred trust that millions of families place in Disney every single year. It's built into the very foundation of the Disney experience. Parents don't just assume their kids are physically safe on the rides. They assume they're safe with even the people Disney puts in uniforms. The smiling faces behind the counters, the custodians cleaning the bathrooms, the security guards watching the gates, the ride operators who help your kids into their seats, the photographers who capture your family memories, the restaurant workers who serve your children's meals. If Disney hired them, they must have been vetted, screened, and deemed trustworthy around children. This assumption runs so deep that most parents never even think to question it. Why would they? Disney has spent decades building a reputation as the ultimate family destination. The company's entire brand depends on parents feeling completely safe with Disney's content and subsequently bringing their children to Disney properties. Every commercial, every advertisement, every piece of marketing reinforces this message. Disney is where families belong, where children can be children without worry, where parents can relax and let their guard down. But behind the smiles and mouse ears, a darker pattern was emerging. A pattern that would shatter the illusion of perfect safety. A pattern that reveals how the very trust that makes Disney magical can also make families vulnerable. When trust breaks. July 1998 started like any other summer month at Walt Disney World. Families were flooding through the gates, kids were laughing, parents were making magical memories. The temperature was soaring, but spirits were high. Lines were long, but nobody seemed to mind. This was Disney after all, the place where dreams come true. Then everything changed. A 16-year-old tourist was allegedly raped by a 17-year-old Disney cook, who allegedly also had a juvenile criminal history. The attack happened on Disney property, in a place where the teenager should have been completely safe, by someone who was supposed to be trustworthy. The cook had slipped through Disney's hiring process because the company only screened applicants in finance, security, or childcare roles. Everyone else, including food service workers who interact with families daily, could be hired without any background check. Think about that for a moment. In 1998, you could get a job working around children at Disney World without anyone checking whether you had a criminal record. The person making your child's food could be a convicted felon. The person cleaning your hotel room could have a history of violence. The person operating the ride your kids love could have been arrested for assault. Disney simply didn't check. The incident sent shockwaves through Disney's executive offices, not just because of the crime itself, but because of what it revealed about their hiring practices. How could a company built on family trust have such massive gaps in employee screening? How could they put profit margins ahead of basic safety measures? How could they have been so naive about the risks? Disney quietly decided to require background checks for every hire, starting in mid-1998. No press announcements, no public apologies, no acknowledgement that they had been putting families at risk for decades. Just a policy change that acknowledged what should have been obvious. Anyone working at a family destination should be screened. The policy took effect after years of Disney allegedly hiring people with records of burglary, aggravated assault and theft. These weren't minor infractions or youthful mistakes. These were serious crimes committed by people Disney was putting in direct contact with children. But was this enough to restore the trust that had been broken? Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd, who would later become Disney's biggest challenger on this issue, put it bluntly: "Wherever you find children, you'll find sexual predators." For Judd, this wasn't just a policy problem. It was a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. Predators don't accidentally end up working around children. They seek out those jobs specifically. They apply to Disney, Universal, SeaWorld, and other family destinations because that's where their victims are. Disney thought background checks would solve the problem. They were wrong. The screening illusion. December 2009. James Traynor seemed like the perfect Disney employee. The 32-year-old food service worker had no prior criminal record. He had passed Disney's new, more rigorous background check with flying colours. He was polite, professional, and reliable. He showed up to work on time, followed company policies, and interacted appropriately with guests. He was exactly the kind of person parents would feel comfortable having around their children. The kind of employee Disney executives could point to as proof their screening was working. Then police arrested him on 200 counts of possessing child pornography. Investigators found over 5,000 illicit images on his computer. The collection was extensive, organised, and deeply disturbing. Some images showed children as young as toddlers being abused. For parents who had trusted him to serve their family's food, the revelation was devastating. This man had been handling their children's meals. He had been in the same restaurants where their kids played and laughed. He had been working at Disney for years, while secretly consuming child abuse material. How could Disney's screening have missed this? The answer was simple and terrifying. Traynor had no prior criminal record, so Disney's background checks wouldn't have caught anything. This was his first known offence. There was nothing in his background to suggest he was dangerous. No arrests, no convictions, no red flags of any kind. He was, in the eyes of any screening system, completely clean. 1 month later, it happened again. Rodney Dillon, a 65-year-old Disney security guard at Hollywood Studios, was arrested on 55 counts of possessing child pornography. This case was even more disturbing because of Dillon's role. He wasn't just any Disney employee, he was a security guard. Parents looked to him for protection. He wore the uniform that represented safety and authority. He had been trusted with one of Disney's most important responsibilities, keeping families safe. Children would have seen his uniform and felt more secure. Parents would have been reassured by his presence. He was supposed to be watching for dangers, not being one himself. But like Trainer, Dillon allegedly had no criminal history. Disney's screening process, no matter how thorough, couldn't predict first-time offenders. And that is not their fault. The parents who had smiled and waved at these employees, who had felt safe because of their presence, had no way to know the danger that was hiding in plain sight. Their children had been in the same spaces as these men, had eaten food prepared by one, had felt protected by the other. The violation of trust was complete. Disney immediately placed Dillon on administrative leave once law enforcement notified them. But the damage to trust was already done. Child protection experts began pointing out the obvious. Background checks only reveal existing records. They can't predict future behaviour, and they can't catch someone who hasn't been caught before. They can't see into someone's mind or predict their intentions. They can't identify someone who has been careful enough to avoid detection for years. For families visiting Disney, this was a sobering reality check. The people they trusted with their children's safety weren't necessarily safe at all. The screening that was supposed to protect them had fundamental limitations that no one wanted to acknowledge. But these weren't isolated incidents. The pattern was about to explode into public view. The scale revealed. 2014 brought the bombshell that changed everything. CNN launched a comprehensive investigation that would expose the true scope of the problem. For 6 months, reporters dug through arrest records, court documents, and police reports. They interviewed law enforcement officials, child safety experts, and Disney employees. What they found was shocking. CNN's 6-month investigation found that at least 35 Disney employees were arrested for child sex crimes between 2006 and 2014. 35 employees. Not over decades, but in just 8 years. That's more than 4 arrests per year, on average. More than 1 Disney employee arrested for child sex crimes every 3 months. These weren't just minor infractions or misunderstandings. These were serious crimes, ranging from online solicitation of minors to child pornography. Each arrest represented families who had trusted these individuals, parents who had assumed their children were safe, kids who had interacted with predators without knowing it, children who had been served food, entertained, protected, or helped by people who were secretly abusing other children. The geographic scope was staggering. The cases spanned both coasts and included some shocking details. Brian Anast, a 45-year-old Disneyland rides mechanic, was arrested in June 2013 and charged with sexually assaulting multiple juvenile victims, including relatives. The offences involved multiple children over several years. He ultimately pleaded guilty in 2014 and was sentenced to 55 years in prison. He had been ensuring that families had safe, magical experiences while destroying one child's innocence. The contradiction was horrifying, but Disney wasn't the only park with this problem. CNN's investigation also found that 5 Universal Studios and 2 SeaWorld employees were arrested for similar crimes during the same period. This wasn't a Disney problem. It was an industry problem. Theme parks across Florida were all drawing from the same labour pool. They were all facing the same challenges with screening, and predators were specifically seeking jobs that would put them near children. The theme park industry had become a hunting ground. Every family destination, every place that marketed itself as safe for children, potentially had predators working there. The magic was still there, but the illusion of perfect safety was crumbling. Parents were asking the right questions, but what they found next was even more troubling. Modern failures. If families thought the 2014 revelations would lead to major changes, they were about to be disappointed. The arrests didn't stop. In fact, they seemed to be accelerating. The media attention seemed to have no deterrent effect whatsoever. If anything, the pattern was getting worse. August of 2021, Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd announced the results of another major sting operation. 4 Disney World workers were caught in the Operation Child Protector sting. Savannah Lawrence and Jonathan McGrew, both Disney custodians, were among the 17 people arrested in the sting, and they were accused of trying to engage in a threesome with a 13-year-old girl. Think about that for a moment. These were the people cleaning the bathrooms your children used, the people emptying the trash cans near the rides your kids loved, the people mopping the floors where your family walked, the people who were supposed to be invisible, helpful, trustworthy. They had access to every area of the park. They worked when families were present and when the park was closed. They could observe children, learn patterns, identify potential victims. Disney's statement said the McGrews were already on unpaid leave at the time of their arrests, but this raised more questions than it answered. Why were they on leave? Had Disney suspected something, or was it unrelated? Were they under investigation for other matters? Had other employees reported suspicious behaviour? The company didn't say. March 2022 brought an even bigger shock. Polk County conducted a 6-day sting called Operation March Sadness 2 that arrested 108 people. Among them were 4 Disney employees, a Polynesian resort lifeguard, a Tomorrowland cosmic restaurant server, a software developer, an IT worker. All were charged with soliciting minors or prostitution. The variety of roles was striking. These weren't just low-level employees or people with limited contact with families. The lifeguard was responsible for children's safety in the water. The restaurant server interacted with families during meals. The software developer had access to Disney's computer systems. The IT worker potentially had access to guest information and security systems. Disney confirmed that 3 of them were current employees and have been placed on unpaid leave. 4 employees in a single sting operation. For parents, this was becoming a nightmare pattern. Every few months, another sting, another group of Disney employees arrested. The company that had promised to create magical memories was repeatedly making headlines for the wrong reasons, but then it was far from over. May 2023, Daniel Rivera, a Disney World staffer with 20 years of service, was arrested by Homeland Security on federal child pornography charges. 20 years with the company, 2 decades of working around families, 2 decades of building trust and relationships with colleagues, 2 decades of access to Disney's facilities and systems. Court records showed he had been accessing child abuse images from both his home and Disney property. Rivera was placed on administrative leave following his arrest. Each of these cases represents a fundamental violation of trust. Families who believed Disney's screening would protect them. Children who interacted with these employees without knowing the danger. Parents who had to explain to their kids that sometimes the people who seem safe aren't safe at all. But the real shock was what experts discovered about the screening process itself. The uncomfortable truth. Here's what child safety experts don't want parents to know about background checks. They're largely useless for preventing first-time offences. Dr. Anna Salter, a psychologist who studies sex offenders, puts it simply: the best predictor of future behaviour is past behaviour. But then it is only true if there's past behaviour to predict from. The problem is that many predators are exceptionally good at hiding their activities. They're often charming, trustworthy, and skilled at gaining people's confidence. They don't look like monsters or act suspiciously. They look like your neighbour, your co-worker, your child's teacher. They volunteer for youth organisations, coach sports teams, and work in family-friendly businesses. Sheriff Grady Judd, who has arrested dozens of theme park employees over the years, warns that predators know how to talk to kids. They have charisma, they have personality, and it's frightening how convincing they can be. They specifically seek out jobs that will put them near children, and they're patient enough to build trust over months or years before acting. This creates an impossible situation for any employer, including Disney. Background checks can only catch people who have already been caught. They can't predict who might commit crimes in the future. They can't identify someone who has been careful enough to avoid detection. And they certainly can't read minds or predict intentions. Disney's screening process, while more thorough than most employers, faces the same fundamental limitations. Disney has maintained since 1998 that it conducts comprehensive background checks on all employees. The company also claims to have computer monitoring and firewalls to ensure family safety. But none of this would have caught James Trina before his first offence. None of it would have predicted Rodney Dillon's behaviour. None of it could have prevented Daniel Rivera from accessing illegal material during his 20-year career. The paradox is stark. Disney has some of the most rigorous screening in the entertainment industry, yet problems persist. This isn't because Disney is negligent or careless. The main idea behind background checks is that someone's past actions can predict how they'll behave in the future. But that doesn't really work when you're dealing with someone who's never committed a crime before. But this creates a crisis of trust for families. Parents want guarantees that don't exist. They want perfect safety in an imperfect world. They want to believe that institutions can protect their children completely. The truth is more complicated and more frightening because trust always involves risk, and no screening process, no matter how thorough, can eliminate that risk entirely. The most disturbing aspect is the long-term nature of the problem. Many of the arrested employees had worked for Disney for years before being caught. Daniel Rivera worked there for 2 decades. Rodney Dillon was a trusted security guard. These weren't people who slipped through for a few weeks or months. They built careers at Disney while hiding their true nature. So what does this mean for families planning their next trip? What parents really need to know. First, let's put this in perspective. Disney employs over 70,000 people across its various properties. Even if 35 employees were arrested over 8 years, that's still a tiny fraction of the workforce. The statistical risk to any individual child is extraordinarily small. The vast majority of Disney employees are exactly what they appear to be: people who want to create magical experiences for families. They're teachers, students, retirees, and career hospitality professionals who genuinely care about making children happy. They take pride in their work and feel honoured to be part of the Disney magic. But that small percentage who aren't safe can cause enormous damage. And the challenge isn't unique to Disney. Between 2006 and 2014, 35 Disney employees were arrested, along with 5 from Universal Studios and 2 from SeaWorld. A costumed character at Sesame Place was arrested for child pornography in 2024. Universal told CNN it has a zero-tolerance policy and conducts similarly thorough checks. SeaWorld said child safety is a top priority with extensive screening. This is an industry-wide challenge, not a Disney-specific problem. The difference is that Disney gets more scrutiny because of its size and reputation. Every arrest makes headlines. Every incident becomes a national story. Smaller parks might have similar issues that get less media attention. Here's what parents should understand about Disney's response protocols. When law enforcement notifies Disney of an arrest, the company immediately suspends the employee. This happened with Rodney Dillon in 2010. It happened with the employees caught in the 2021 sting. It happened with the 4 employees caught in the 2022 operation. Disney's policy is clear. Any employee arrested for crimes involving children is immediately placed on unpaid leave pending the outcome of the charges. The company also cooperates fully with law enforcement investigations. They provide access to employee records, computer systems, and any other information that might be relevant. But this is reactive, not preventive. The company can only respond to problems after they're discovered. They can't prevent problems that haven't happened yet. What about screening improvements? Disney has maintained since 1998 that it conducts comprehensive background checks on all employees. The company also claims to have computer monitoring and firewalls to ensure family safety. But experts note that these measures have limitations. Computer monitoring can catch someone accessing illegal material on company computers, but it can't monitor personal devices or home computers. Firewalls can prevent certain types of internet access, but they can't stop someone from bringing illegal material to work on personal devices. Periodic rescreening could catch employees who commit crimes after being hired, but Disney has never publicly announced such a comprehensive program for all workers. The cost and logistics of rescreening 70,000 plus employees annually would be enormous. Sheriff Judd has suggested that theme parks should consider polygraph tests as part of their screening process. But polygraphs are controversial, expensive, and not admissible in court. Most employment law experts doubt they would significantly improve safety. They could also create legal liability if they produce false positives. The reality is that no screening system is perfect. Parents need to balance trust with awareness. This doesn't mean avoiding Disney or other theme parks, and it means understanding that even the most rigorous screening has limitations. It means staying alert and trusting your instincts if something feels wrong. And it means having conversations with your children about personal safety, even in places that feel completely safe. Teaching children about appropriate boundaries, encouraging them to speak up if something makes them uncomfortable, and staying engaged with their experiences are all crucial. The future of family trust. So where does this leave families who want to visit Disney? The magic isn't gone, but the illusion of perfect safety needed to end. Disney continues to be one of the safer entertainment destinations in the world. The company's response to incidents has generally been swift and appropriate. When employees are arrested, they're immediately suspended. When problems are identified, Disney cooperates with law enforcement. The company's reputation depends on family trust, so they have every incentive to maintain the highest possible standards. But those standards will never be perfect. The industry is pushing for better standards overall. Some experts recommend a mandatory reporting of these arrests to a national registry. This would prevent someone fired from one park from being hired at another. It would also help law enforcement track patterns and identify high-risk individuals. Others suggest more frequent rescreening of employees, especially those in positions with high child contact. Annual or biannual background checks could catch employees who commit crimes after being hired. Technology could also help. Better computer monitoring systems could identify employees accessing inappropriate material. Full disclosure though, I am not a tech expert and wouldn't know the exact feasibility of these systems. I'm just making an educated guess here. These measures might help, but they won't eliminate risk entirely. Sheriff Grady Judd continues his enforcement efforts in Central Florida. His stings have become a powerful deterrent, and his willingness to call out theme parks by name has forced the industry to take notice. The sheriff's aggressive approach has made the region less attractive to predators, but it has also revealed the scope of the problem that already existed. For parents, the lesson isn't that Disney is dangerous, It's that trust should be informed rather than blind. The vast majority of Disney employees are exactly what they appear to be, people who want to create magical experiences for families. But a small percentage aren't, and no screening process can identify them all in advance. This doesn't mean parents should live in fear or avoid places their children love. It means being aware, staying alert, and understanding that safety is a shared responsibility. Disney can screen and monitor and respond to incidents. But parents also need to trust their instincts, communicate with their children, and stay engaged with their kids' experiences. The magic of Disney isn't diminished by acknowledging these realities. If anything, it makes the genuine magic more precious. When parents and children can trust each other, stay aware together, and communicate openly about safety, they can enjoy the wonder of Disney while protecting what matters most. The illusion of perfect safety is gone, but informed trust, balanced with appropriate caution, can keep families safe while preserving the joy that makes Disney special. That's not a betrayal of the Disney magic. It's the evolution of family safety in the modern world. The magic is still there. It just requires a little more wisdom to enjoy it safely. The trust that families place in Disney is still valid. It just needs to be informed to trust rather than blind faith. Understanding the limitations of screening systems doesn't mean losing faith in institutions. It means approaching them with the kind of wise caution that protects families while preserving joy. And that might be the most important lesson of all.